Alright, hello and welcome. This is Aaron with Steel Picking, and in this video lesson I'm going to try to break down some aspects of the tuning, the E knife tuning. I've had some requests and I've had some questions on our posts about the use of the chromatic strings, and maybe not necessarily go into the history of how the tuning came about, but maybe try to, for lack of better words, like demystify the E knife tuning and why maybe it came to be like it is. So what we're dealing with is an instrument that is manipulated mechanically by pedals. So on a fretted instrument like a guitar, obviously you have the option of using your fingers to make a string raise or lower. So here we have to think physics of how far you can actually bend a string. So they incorporated some of those aspects into the tuning. Now I know that may sound kind of complicated, but it's not. What we're going to do is we're going to simply look at the E knife tuning, discuss that, then we'll talk about the pedals and knee levers. So this would probably be, it might be a good little lesson for a brush up or a refresher, but it's probably more geared for a beginner student. So let's check this lesson out, and I hope it's going to help you. All right, so let's get into our lesson. Like I said, this is probably going to be more for a beginner, but what I wanted to do, since I've had a lot of people ask me questions about the tuning and about why they have these, they say like sound strange or okay, so when you get the steel and then you're trying to figure this out and you hear stuff like that, you're like, it must be out of tune. But what we've done, or what's been done over the years, is that they've taken a basic E tuning. So they're trying to me, I tried to relate it to a guitar. It's tuned to an E chord, basically open. So if I took the bar, since I can't physically fret this instrument like a guitar, we use the bar for that. So if I place the bar on the 3rd fret, like right here across this line, which is a fret, it would be a G just like on a regular guitar. So what we've done now in the tuning, since we mechanically have to raise and lower these strings or stretch them, they're only going to be able to go so far before they would actually break. So what they've done are detuned. They wouldn't come back and tune true. So they've taken this tuning and kind of extended it out. So within this tuning, like when I'm teaching my beginner students, you have major groups, and what I mean by that is that you have certain strings that sound in tune. Okay, so if you were playing that, that would be 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3. Then if you looked at that, there's really only 3 notes you're playing there. You're playing 2 of these, the 10 and 5 are the same, just an octave difference. 4 and 8 are the same, and 6 and 3 are the same. So even within that, it's pretty simple. You have 3 notes basically that you're playing, and if you were trying to relate that to like a, say maybe like a keyboard, you notice that those notes repeat. They're called octaves. So let's look at that then. We have 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3. Okay, so if we do that open, no bar, no pedals, no knee levers, that's an E chord. So now let's look at why in the world they would add this note, this 9th string, the 7th string, the 2nd string, and the 1st string. So let's look at those. The way I teach is that you play a major group, which would be any of the first strings I told you. Now those are E chords. So what we're going to do, if we add this 9th string, we're simply making a different form of an E chord. So those are major, E major. If we add the 9th string, that changes that chord to an E7th chord. So what you have there then is simply a different E. Now the 7th string, they started thinking about how they could play a scale. Okay, since to play the steel you would have to manipulate those strings with the bar, then they started adding the pedals to which would physically raise or lower those strings. Okay, so they added this 7th string in the tuning here. So that gives us, like, if you were playing a major scale, you would play 8, then 7, then 6. Now you would have a pedal, or you should have a pedal, that would raise that 6th string. So you'd press that and play that. Then you would play 5. Then you would play 5 with a pedal that would raise that note up. Okay, now here we get into the tuning, adding something to the tuning to help us with this scale, because they're still thinking E major. You play that 2nd string, then you play 4. Okay, so why that 2nd string is up here like this, not down in the tuning, that's just something that evolved over the years. And same reason with this 1st string, why it's on top, and this string is the 3rd string actually sounds higher. Again, it's just the way the tuning evolved. So what you have to do when you're learning is you have to learn your basic 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, and kind of navigate around 7, 9, 2, and 1 to get used to those. So let's look at the scale again. Let's go 8, 7, 6, and press the pedal. It raises 6. Normally that's called the B pedal. Play 5. Play 5 with a pedal that raises it. Play 2. Play 4. Now let's look at how this 1st string could be added to that. Then play 3. Okay, so what we're doing now, we're extending a scale out, a major scale, and we're adding other tones to it. Now we don't have to know theory per se to learn these things. We need to start training our ear to hear these, and now they're not so dissonant or out of tune. Okay, so we can do those notes now, all of them, and they're starting to sound a little better. Okay, so now let's look at another reason why they have this 7th. We'll kind of concentrate on that for a second. Is because if you're starting to play scales, okay, that note falls really well by placing it here at the 7th position. So you could play 8, 6 as a group, then play 6 and 7 as a group, and raise that 6th string up with the B pedal. So now we got, okay, now play 5 and 6, no pedals. Now come back down, 6 and 7 with your B pedal. Now 6 and 8, no pedal. So now what you're playing is basically, in truth, it's kind of like a harmony scale. now the great thing about the steel is because, you know, people look at it and sit down to it and they think it's just so complicated, which in some aspects it is. One of the easier things is that if I wanted to do that same thing in the key of C, I would take this bar and lay it at the 8th fret. Okay, I did the same thing I did in E. This didn't change. My right hand didn't change. The only thing changed was moving the bar. If I wanted to do it out of G, I would take it to the 3rd fret. Okay, so what I'm saying in essence is once you memorize your right hand, the groups, and you start memorizing what your pedals are doing, then you can play those same licks or same phrases in different keys simply by manipulating the tuning with the bar. Okay, so now let's look at this 9th string and what in the world we're doing with that. In this tuning, like I said, and this is probably the standard tuning that everybody, you know, probably 99% of everybody that's playing a steel guitar are using this E9 tuning. So this note, again, sounds crazy. But that is if you were playing a scale, if you were playing that in music theory, that would be the 7th tone of a scale. So what they did, they went ahead and just simply added that to the tuning because, again, you couldn't maybe physically do a slant with the bar like they did in the original, you know, lap steel days, or you couldn't pull or lower that string to get that note. So they, instead of doing that or trying to figure that out, they added it to the tuning. So now what we can do now, if you needed a 7th type chord, it's simply built into the tuning. So that if I played 5, 6, 9, that would simply be an E7 chord. So anytime I add that 9th string with any of those major groups, that gives me an E7th chord. So that's, to me, that's just my opinion. That's why they did it like that. So again, when you're learning, you know, it's kind of like a pitfall. You kind of stay away from 9, 7, 1, 2. But you need those notes later on as you get more involved in your playing and in your chord structures. You'll see where those come out better. Now, another thing I teach my students when I'm teaching the beginner classes is, let's say like we're looking at the 3 most common chords in the key of in a major song or a country type song. And with our bar, we would have E open. We could play 5, 6, 8. We could go up 5 frets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, I'm saying the right hand's not changing, so that's a good thing. We play 5, 6, 8 here. That's an A chord. Now, when we go to the next chord that's most common in the key of E, if you were playing or singing a song in that key, you'd go to the 7th. And this time we're going to add 5, 6, 9. Okay, you see how that sounds right now. Then it goes back to E open with any of the major groups. Okay, so now we can kind of see that there is a purpose for that type of chord. Normally, in a song, you have 3 basic chords. You have the first chord that you start out in, the second chord will be up 5 frets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The next chord is up 2 more, or up to our 7th fret. Now this time, we're going to add that 9th string. And that makes that a 7th chord. And in this instance, it's a B7. Back to where we started, which was open. Okay, so let's take that in theory and practice it. Let's say we're playing out of the key of G. Let's go to our 3rd fret. So now we're in G. We're going to do this hand doesn't change. We're going to play this as the 1st chord. Okay, I said the next chord should be up 5 frets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I play the same groove. Okay, the next chord should be up 2 more, or up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now this time we add the 9th string. Okay, then back to where we started. Okay, now if I'm looking at this, I played a G, a C, and a D7th. Back to where we started. Okay, now let's look at going back open. Let's look at how we can add this 1st and 2nd string into what we're playing and make it sound musically or maybe more pleasing to the ear. Now, I had some questions about why they have those strings there. We're simply going to accept it that that's the way the tuning evolved and try to figure out what we can do with it. So what we can do now is we know that the major groups are 10, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3. We can use this 1st and 2nd string as single string notes. So if I'm playing something in E, which is open, I could do something like that. So what I did is simply play 5, 4, 1, 3, 1, 4, 2, 4. Okay, now that doesn't sound bad at all. That's simply playing notes within an E scale. This is E tuning, open, no bar. So let's take that and look at if we place that bar on our 3rd fret, E, F, F sharp, G. Now that's G. Okay, so we did the same exact thing, adding those 2 strings that we thought, initially were dissonant or out of tune, and made something more melodic or more musical. Okay, so I did it out of the 1 chord, I did it out of the 5 chord, I did it out of the 7th chord. Even if I don't know what those are, I know that whatever I start out in, the next most common chord would be up 5. The next most common chord after that would be up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to where I started. So let's just go right here. Even if I don't know what chord that is, which is G sharp or A flat, this never changed. My right hand didn't change. The count won't change. The next most common chord ought to be up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next one ought to be up 2 more, or 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so let's look at just kind of a recap. What we've got, they call this an E9th tuning. So if I'm playing a major scale, and this is just a little bit of theory, that first note, that F sharp note, which is tuned open to F sharp, is the 9th tone of this scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's how they're deriving this, calling this an E ninth tuning, because you have that note on top there. Okay, so if you play stuff like that, that doesn't sound dissonant. So that's basically what you're doing. Now, the next thing you look at too is when I called that scale out a while ago, you simply realize that you're manipulating the 10th string with a pedal, and what I mean by that is you're physically stretching that 10 and 5 instead of going. You're doing that with a pedal. You're also manipulating 3 and 6. Okay, so if we're looking at the A pedal, the one that raises 5 and 10, you're moving that note up 2 frets. Okay, if you're looking at the 3 and 6, you're moving that note up 1 fret. Okay, so what they did then, they were trying to figure out how they could play those musical notes of that scale, and that's just my opinion, without having to do all that with the bar, or which is this note. Okay, it's much more efficient to do it with the pedals. Then you get into what a lot of people obviously like about the steel, is that you hear that those strings bending and raising and lowering, and that's almost impossible to duplicate with any other instrument. So you actually get the sound that's associated with this steel. Alright, so I think that's enough things for you to look at and to maybe work on. But like I said, it's kind of, and it's kind of cliche to say demystifying the tuning, but just realize that as this has been going on probably since the 50s, that they were working on this tuning and the pedals, that they had to figure out a way to get as many notes within the scale that they wanted without physically doing a bar slant or something like they did when it was non-pedals, and also to realize that there's a limit, just physics, to how far you can bend or lower a string without breaking it, or to get it where it won't even tune up. So this, like I said, has evolved, quite a few decades. So I hope this lesson helps you, and give it a try. Alright, as always, just want to thank you for watching our videos. Jacob and I appreciate it. And if you like this, if it helped you, just hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, go ahead and do that. That way you get the notifications when we post new videos. And also, you might want to check out our Patreon site. So we'd appreciate that, and that would help us in what we're doing. So as always, on behalf of Jacob and I, this is Aaron for Still Picking, and hope this helped you, and keep picking.